put this down for posterity.
Meeting is being recorded.
So our guest this evening, it's the end of April, though it doesn't quite feel like it, almost the beginning of May in the greater Boston area. So Daniel Gervais, north of the border, has agreed to visit us tonight and give us a little bit of his own perspective on the radio hobby from latitudes north, as well as give us a little talk on Canadian radio. So, I mean, I guess the thing that I'm kind of interested in hearing about is, I'll periodically have people tell me, "Oh, and this is a Canadian RCA radio, and it's manufactured a little bit better than some of the stuff that came out of Camden." So, you'll hear these stories, and maybe throughout the presentation tonight, we'll get an inkling as to why that might be. So, Dan, thanks so much for joining us tonight. This is fun for us, and we always like to hear a different perspective. And I previewed your presentation. It looks very interesting. So I'm sure we'll have some questions as well. So I'm just going to turn it over to you at this point and let you get the ball rolling. And thanks so very much for being with your pals down here in New England tonight.
All right. Well, I'll start by sharing my screen, and I'll start with the presentation.
Oh, yes, the Mackenzies.
Yes.
That's where it all starts, the Great White North.
Yes. So this is the history of Canadian radio is within this picture. There's probably a guitar amp in the background in there somehow or another. But I thought I'd get a kick out of this as Bub and Doug McKenzie. If you guys don't know them, they were a big hit in the 80s with their Great White North album. And two hosers drinking Molson and Canadian beer.
And set your screen view with a little screen at the bottom.
Screen.
The screen mode. Yeah, you're right now. We see all your slides on the left. The bottom of the
bottom of the. I see.
There's a thing that looks like a screen.
Yeah, right by the slider at the lower right corner, I think is what, or actually to the left of it.
To the left, I don't have anything. To the right, I have show grid.
You have the do you have the Zoom slider there on your view there, Dan?
No, I don't.
Oh, interesting.
You're in PowerPoint, right?
I'm in
this
PowerPoint.
This is a PDF.
Okay. No, this is a PowerPoint.
You can do slideshow too.
Oh, I apologize. You're right. I'm looking right at it. I have the PDF. I apologize.
Okay. Okay.
No problem. Yeah.
But do you see the presentation?
Yeah, you have to go to. We can see it. It's just that you see it in the slide format. On the left side, we can see the slides coming forward.
Okay. I see.
I think there's the slide presentation just in the lower bar to the left of the Zoom slider. You can hit the presentation. There should be a little icon I see there. Oh, I think we got Tom here from the trenches of.
There we go. You could use in the upper toolbar. I think you can just go to slideshow.
That's true. You can do that too.
I don't have that in the upper bar. I have mute, stop video, participants, chat. This is the Zoom.
Oh, yeah, no, it'd be your regular desktop.
Yeah. Right. So you could unshare for a moment. I think that may be what the issue.
Okay. I'll unshare.
And then you can go to.
Then you can go to slideshow.
Slideshow. That will ease it up a little bit.
So on SlideShare, I have the screen. Is this better?
Sure is. That's awesome.
Yes.
Is it?
Marvy.
Yep.
Okay.
Great.
Okay.
Très bien.
Très bien. There we go. So, okay, second slide. So for those of you who don't know me, some of you do, but most don't. I am Daniel Gervais. I am a mechanical engineer. I've been involved in radio restoration since 2005. I've been a member of SQCRA, which is the Quebec Radio Club since that time. I've been on the board of that club for a number of years. I was president for 3 years. And I'm also a member of the Ottawa Vintage Radio Club and New Jersey Antique Radio Club. And I really what characterizes me is really I enjoy restoration more than collecting. So if I buy a radio, it won't be a running condition and it won't be looking very good. So my passion is to restore the radios and not necessarily just to put them on the shelf. And so once they're restored, I just don't know what to do with them. So this presentation is a collection of info that I've gathered from the info that I have here, but also key peoples like Daniel Labelle, who's member of the SQCRA for all of his vintage advertising and some of the radio history. Ken Lyons, who's also a member of SQCRA. Everything that was from Northern Electric is taken from him. Terry Brock is a person I found on the net who has a good site on Marconi, and I exchanged with him to have permission to get stuff from his site. Also, Musée des Ondes Berliner, this is the Berliner Museum here in Montreal. I've got info from them. The Hammond Museum, which I'll talk briefly at the end, and the Radio Trade Builder magazine, which is, I believe, a Canadian magazine. This is a magazine that was published probably until the 70s, but was towards the people who were selling radios. So it's a great source of info for everything that was going on the radio side in Canada. So I'm not going to talk about everything, and I'm not a history buff, so I don't have everything square. So some things you see doesn't fit. Just can be that. It will. There's a mic that's on somewhere.
Yeah, I just fixed that, I think.
Yeah. So I'll be presenting some Canadian radio manufacturers, not all of them, but I basically chose the ones that were located near where I live in Montreal. So the big question, we discussed it earlier. So what is a Canadian radio? You know, so I asked myself that question, like, what qualifies it, right, for that? Is it made in Canada, assembled? Is it Canadian design, manufactured here, or is it just a Canadian company? So, and the best answer I can find is that it's really sort of a mix of all of these things. There's really not a true Canadian-born radio. Some were, it did happen, but for the radios that were truly like exclusive to Canada, there weren't that many. Most were companies that immigrated or had plants in Canada. Some were just copies of what was being done in the States, and some were more different. The schematic, the electronics was different here in Canada. But so most are there's really not one of these that defines a Canadian radio, unfortunately. I will be touching on Marconi, Northern Electric, RCA, and I'll be talking about the Hammond Museum, although it's not Canadian radio. They did produce some radios. And I'll be leaving out some of the big names, like Electro Home is really probably one of the most Canadian, if I can say, a radio manufacturer. Rogers in Toronto. GE, Westinghouse, basically we're doing almost near copies at Spartan and Philco also. So there's lots of history in all these other guys, but today just Marconi, Northern Electric, and RCA. Canadian Marconi was incorporated in the very start of the century, last century now, 1903. Was established, this is a picture of the original plant on William Street in 1909. They established the first experimental broadcasting station from this site in 1919. So I don't know what was the first broadcasting station in the US, but this is pretty early. 1919 is pretty, yeah, it's pretty early. And why do we have Marconi in Canada? You know, because in 1919, American Marconi had to become RCA. they were kind of forced into that. So we were left with the Marconi, and it happened like that because Marconi, because of legal problems he had in the States, he went. It's not because of the Great White North. It's basically because of the legal problems he could avoid being here that he came here. So 1921, first radio receiver, and 1925, the company becomes Canadian Marconi, building radios. In the 50s, lots of TVs. TVs took a big part of their production, and near the end of the 70s, Canadian Marconi was big on aircraft navigation, avionics, especially also for the military. They were very big in that, and they still exist under a different name. Here in 2019, they were acquired by I don't know, Esterline is their new name. Canadian Marconi was a colossal company in the 60s and 70s. They were employing about 12,000 people. That's a big number for Canada. Yeah.
Wow.
So as I mentioned before, during World War II, Marconi was big in the military, key supplier for the Royal Canadian Navy, and one of their big product was the CSR 5 receiver. They also built the famous wireless set number 19 Mark III, but this set here was also produced by RCA and Northern Electric. This is their CSR 5 receiver. It was also used as part of the transceiver. Like they would also include this set into the bigger module comprising of a transmitter, and this was the receiving part of it. So this is one of their big products for the Navy.
Interesting.
I put this in because it gave a little bit of it showed when they were producing and when they were not. And I remember being at a presentation at RCA from one of the guys there doing the design and doing, designing the cabinets. And I was always wondering, when did they have time to do this? But so this is what would happen to these companies. So they would produce from July till Christmas time, but for the first 6 months of the year, they were basically designing the products, taking info from their sales people, and this. So basically, for the first part of the year, they were designing the radios, and then in the second part of the year, they would be producing them. And like, this is not a way that today it's impossible to do this. I mean, today you're producing year around. You're acquiring info, you're designing all the times, but they would actually stop production. And so you imagine, I don't know what would happen to all these people in the plants. If there was like 5,000 people working on a production line, what would happen to them in the first part of the year? Their unemployment insurance did not exist back then.
Right.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
It was probably a seasonal type of work, much like, some agricultural work or.
Yeah, employed a lot of women. Most, like in the States, you see old pictures of women inside the plant, winding bobbins, working,
Yes.
Yeah.
Good manual dexterity, small fingers, ability to hand wire things, all those things were pluses. Yep.
You're right. So this is the big plant that was built later on in the 30s for Marconi. They had their station. They would broadcast from that station, and if you made a contact with the VE2CMC, you would get that call. The QSO card, I believe.
Yes.
I actually have one of those, a blank one. So that the XWA was moved to this location. Yeah. And unfortunately, I did not get to see this plant before it was demolished, and it was still there when I was here in Montreal, but I did not get a chance to see that plant.
That picture looks like from the early mid-60s too, I would say, roughly speaking.
It's actually from that QSO card. I mean, it's kind of brownish, but my card is actually in better condition than this.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Oh, it's too bad. That'd make a great apartment, you know, with that tower. Easy to
Yes,
find.
yes. They tore it down, and I believe I have another slide on there. This is they made some great sets, great woodwork on there. The wood was just fabulous. I have a couple of Marconi sets. I have I don't have this one, but I have an older one, a Model 70. The woodwork is just beautiful. So I put in here some ads. I mean, I don't have much history related to that. I just thought it'd be kind of neat to look at these ads. Maybe you don't get a chance to see these on your side of the woods. So sometimes you'll see these ads I put in there just because they look good. And you may not have seen some of these things.
Interesting. The Eaton name was a well-known,
Yes.
I think, store up there.
Yes,
Right?
Eaton's was very big, just like Simpson Sears. And these stores all had catalogs, and they all sold these radios. Yes, yes.
I would have come across a limousine that they had that was used in the family at an auction, and it was from their family. It was a Imperial. So that's
Really?
Yeah, it was very interesting. We made it over to the U.S., but it did end up there, and it was I think a '59 Chrysler an Imperial, but it was originally bought by the Eaton family.
Wow. So for me, radio collecting started with this set. This is my grandfather's radio.
Ooh,
In the 70s, I remember taking it apart and cutting some wires, making them shorter to improve the efficiency of the radio. Obviously, it stopped working. Yeah. And, I was probably only 7 back then, and I was already soldering stuff and stuff, but I had no idea what the voltage value was in there. And thank God I didn't power it up, or anyways, I didn't get electrocuted. But anyways, about fast forward 30 years later, I found the radio sitting in my sister's shed. I brought it back to Montreal, and I restored it to obviously working condition. Yeah.
Beautiful, absolutely beautiful. Love the
Nice
design.
case with that sort of waterfall look on the grill. Very nice.
Wow.
Yeah.
Neat
Yeah.
oval dial too. It's not circular; it's oval.
It's a glass. It's a oval glass, like shape. But the dial itself, it's not printed on the dial on the glass.
Wow, very, very.
This is a Model 70. I have this model. Unfortunately, it's not a picture of mine. Mine is in much worse condition. It's a beautiful set. I still have a lot of work to do on it, but just to give you an idea of all the beautiful woodworking,
Yeah, that's very attractive. Interesting dial face too.
Yes, my dial face is in good condition. What's really neat, particular about this radio is that they have this output meter. When the voltage on the voice coil reaches a certain voltage set point, it lights up 2 lights near the bottom of the dial, like you're overloading the speaker.
Oh, really? So
Yeah,
it's
as if
Almost like a signal strength indicator type of thing.
it's basically a voltmeter on the voice coil.
Voltmeter.
Yeah, and
That does not look like a lightweight set either. That looks like a backbreaker.
Oh
Yeah.
gosh, yes, that looks.
Yeah, and I don't know, a lot of sets in Canada were for 25 hertz because of Niagara Falls producing 25 hertz. So some of my sets have a huge transformer because of the lower frequency, the line.
Interesting.
This is another set I restored. This is the original condition, much like the model I have from my grandpa's, and this is the restored version. It's very similar in design to the other one.
Wow, that's
Okay.
beautiful.
Yeah, yeah, it's very nice.
Mid-30s, late 30s?
It was mid 30s. Yeah,
Wow.
I had at that time I had written to Roger Hart, which was a guy. I picked up the phone. I phoned up Marconi, and back then you would talk to people. So the receptionist patched me into this one guy in the company who was big on radio history, and he gave me the schematic. And
Beautiful.
yeah.
Cool.
That's an extremely nice little piece of grill work too over
Yeah.
the speaker cloth. Very nicely done.
Mm-hmm.
There's some careful woodwork there.
By
Yeah.
yourself.
Yeah. So Marconi was famous. No,
The old
Our-
bias cells.
the bias cells, and I realized later on that I believe they're not as popular in the States as they are here in Canadian Marconi sets. I don't know. It's my impression. When I talk about bias cells, or well, I was listening to a presentation by the New Jersey, and they were saying that they had found these weird things called bias cells. So it dawned to me that maybe they weren't as used by other manufacturers, but they were widely used by Marconi. And so,
I was gonna say, what purpose do they serve that would have been used by a different technology then, like in other sets?
well, what you need to bias the tube because
Yeah.
to give it an offset on the grid.
Mhm.
So what they did is they gave it an offset on the cathode, and sometimes you can have a fixed, you can have a resistor on the cathode,
Mhm.
or you can put just a voltage on the grid to offset the thing, and the Marconi opted often to put the a battery right on the grid. I should have added the schematic. I thought you guys would be interested, but anyway, they
Yeah,
didn't do it.
I had a couple radios with the bias cells in them, and I did doing a little research. There was even an article on the internet about how to rejuvenate the bias
Mhm.
cells. So that,
Yeah.
Well,
You can rejuvenate to a certain extent, and I have tried it. Like you see, this one here has a hole in it. And
yeah.
Mhm.
So the way these are constructed is that the outside shell is the lead, and the black carbon track here is the anode.
Hmm.
Yes. And basically they put a gasket material, and the electrolyte solution is sitting in here. So the failure, the mechanism of failure is that this gasket dries up, cracks up, and then the electrolyte evaporates. The liquid evaporates, and it becomes a dry powder. So when you okay, so when the gasket dries up, the electrolyte evaporates, and then the thing dies. When you put a small hole in it and you put water back into it, it works again.
Yep.
The problem is it doesn't last because of there's still the gasket here that has already failed, and it's going to fail
Yeah.
again. So
Yeah.
the way to fix it truly would be to open up this and reinstall a new gasket or stuff like that. So you can rejuvenate them by injecting water into it, but it lasts maybe a couple of months, So sometimes I put these little cells, these like miniature cells for hearing aid.
Mhm.
And here's a little holder that I made that flips the polarity of the hearing of the small battery, and then you can just insert this back into the clip. Or sometimes I just take a almost dead AA, AAA battery, and I just solder it in there, and that's it.
Yeah, I was going to say my memory's failing me. It's been a while since I had to do it, but it was only something on the order of a volt or 1.5 maybe at the most.
That's right. It's basically like one cell because it's one, the lead is and the carbon is here, so it gives
Yep.
out. Yeah. Anyways, I just thought I'd mention it to you, and if you find these things, and when I first saw it, I didn't, when I first started, I didn't know at all what this was.
The hell.
So, Northern Electric. Northern Electric was big in telephone. They started in telephone and they got into radio. And when they got into radio, they were basically making chassis for Victor Talking Machine. Now, Victor Talking Machine will eventually become RCA. So this is some of their early models. They're called, if you ever find one that says Victor Northern Electric, you know right away it's very early Northern Electric.
Ah,
They ceased production in 26, but restarted in 31, basically assembling for American Bosch. And this association with American Bosch lasted for a little while. And it happens often that the schematic or from Northern Electric basically used the American Bosch schematic. And sometimes only the cabinet would change to a small extent, or sometimes just the escutcheon would change, but everything else was American Bosch radio. They really started on their own in 37 when they produced their Glamis model here. So if you think about it, that's pretty late in 1937, but they will catch up, and they will catch up big. As World War II approaches, 30 models were introduced. However, production, they had to stop producing late 1943. I wrote in here, production did not cease in 42. You'll see later in the presentation that it actually was only reduced in 42.
I like that dial of pleasure.
Yes.
Almost sounds a little X-rated.
I know. It's like, well, let's
You have to be
before
18,
900
18 or over to have one of those radios in your house.
Well, those before 900 numbers were available.
It had 2 buttons. Okay. So this is their dial of pleasure.
Oh my
series.
goodness.
Beautiful, beautiful radios.
Wow.
Here's a picture of an actual set. I restored this one for someone else.
That's gorgeous.
Wow, that is fantastic.
It was I think it was 11 tubes. It was big. And the only, I talked to Ken. I said, what was the meaning of the dial of pleasure? He said, there was nothing. There's nothing. It was just a gimmick, just like the magic eye type of thing,
Right.
But Northern Electric was famous for using on their ABC, they would use the current to light up a small bulb. And if the bulb went bad, the ABC would not work. So, and this bulb is it's kind of hard to find. It's very low amps, like, I forget, maybe 40 milliamps or something in that nature.
Okay.
And if you do have a radio from Northern Electric that has one of these lamps, bulbs, you can always write to me. I have a couple of them because they're really hard to find. Nowadays, nothing fits into the voltage and amps required.
Is there anything LED, any LED bulb you could actually retrofit?
No, because it affects the circuit. Yeah, and it actually doesn't work very well. The lamps will blow out rather quickly if you make a mistake. So it's actually a bad design. It did work, but it's no. When we were talking about design, Northern Electric they weren't badly made, but they were complicated as hell.
Well, that's fabulous. So beautiful.
Yeah. 1936, they came out with some great names. I mean, I have a listing of all the names of the radio that they made, and you can't think of a better scenario. They have names like Empress of Canada, the Normandy, the Queen Mary. You'll see later on they put a lot of marketing effort, through not only the radio, the looks of the radio, but also the name of the radio. And it rung a bell for Canada. I mean, if Empress of Canada, back then in 37, we're still very British,
Yeah.
So anything
Sure.
that sounds queenish, and then, in fact, you'll see later on. So King George gets the 6 gets inaugurated in 1937. So there you go. They take advantage of that, and they bring out this coronation line. And out of this coronation line, there's beautiful, beautiful models that will come out. The Bombay, which is Ken Lyons has restored that radio. They're very tall, and they also had some small ones like cabinet mantle.
That chair side is really
I
cool.
know.
The
I was thinking the
Mandalay.
same.
That's
Yeah.
great.
That's very unique looking.
That's
Because
awesome.
our chair sides down here tend to be very boxy and kind of square. That's
Yeah.
a beautiful thing with the spacer, between the
Yeah, probably
little
Yeah.
piece. That's a nice,
like
nice
that.
looking set.
Yeah.
It's a magazine rack.
Yeah, I was thinking the same
Magazine,
thing,
right.
Noah. Exactly. Wow, that's gorgeous.
Hmm.
I've never
Yeah.
seen one until now in the ad.
I've never seen one of these. I've restored this one. I've restored this one also, and this one. And this is the Vimy. Of course, for Canada, Vimy Ridge is a
Vimy
the
Ridge,
big ba-
yes, in
the big
France.
battle. Yeah, and there's an enormous.
Bloodbath. That's what it
Yeah,
was.
it's a blood. Yeah, there's a big monument in France for that, and so they made out this model called the Vimy. I have that model. It's not restored yet, but Ken Lyons, I bought it from Ken, and it needs a lot of work, but it's beautiful, beautiful radio. Yeah.
Now,
Wow.
Dan, is that like a faux finish or is that real inlay, like on the veneer?
There is no faux finish on Northern Electric.
Wow. Wow.
Mhm.
Wow.
Oh, yeah.
That
That's
baby
awesome.
looks heavy. It's almost like a monument for a radio. You
Yeah,
can see the red.
Yeah,
It's not just a radio, it's a monument.
yeah. Artistically, I mean, it follows the angle of the monument, and these
Beautiful
are
lines.
yeah, they're embossed. I should have it closer, but these are embossed brass selectors, and they as you rotate it, you see different sections light up.
Very nice.
Wow. Looks like a lot of eye candy there.
you know, I haven't restored it yet, but I need to do it. I need to pay, if I don't restore it, that thing is not going to end up anywhere else but the dumpster. So I need to do something with that. Later on, this is 1938. So you see, they started, when was it? In 37, producing 37, 36. If I go up to, see in 37, they ceased the association with American Bosch. So look at the step. In just a couple of years, they went from building radios for somebody else to themselves doing their own radios. Of course, No King came back, so they had to bring out another line. So they called it the Neurophonic. Yeah, this one here, 18 tubes, 150 pounds. I don't know which one of these, but maybe this one.
They should call it the traction maker.
Yeah,
150
Northern-
pounds. Wow.
Northern Electric built this humongous plant in 1929. So Northern Electric, they were integrated, like they would do their own rubber, their own screws, their own fabric. They did everything. So raw material would come in from one side of the building and finished radios would come out to the other end. And they did that for, radio for Northern Electric was basically a sideline. Their focus was on telephones, telecommunications later on, but in the beginning, just telephones. So this is the plant. I got a picture of this plant. I thought it was really neat to see the scaffolding, all wood scaffolding. And this is the finished version.
Hmm.
The plant still
It's a
exists.
big
This
building.
is it. Yeah, this is
I love
it
those
here.
cars all parked up next to it too. Look at them all.
Yeah, no, you can tell the era for sure.
That's great.
And this is the tram, the rail
Yep, and you've got the railroad cars to obviously for materials. Yep,
for material.
beautiful.
Yes.
Wow, that's
So
cool.
this picture is in the same direction. This is the plant today. This is a snapshot I took on Google Earth. This is Montreal Island is here. I'm sorry. This is this is Laval. So we're on this is the river that runs here is okay, I got lots of memory. This is what used to be the old seaway. You know, now we have the St. Lawrence, but this is the old Le Chine Canal, where the material will be transported before we had the seaway. Yeah.
Mhm.
Ah, okay.
So this plant so employed, 9,000 somewhat employees in 44. So that's
That's
Wow.
healthy.
yeah. Yeah.
Healthy.
Just give me a moment. I need to.
Oh, that's quite all right.
take it.
The dog has a question? I don't think it agrees with that.
Hang on, guys. Sorry about that.
Quite all right.
It's okay. I have an aggressive cat who likes to visit me during Zoom meetings. So if you hear a scream, it's probably my foot being attacked.
Now, is your cat there and causing the dogs to stop barking?
Right? Maybe he's having a Zoom with the dogs. I don't know.
Sorry.
So this plant, when they moved out, this plant became vacant, and now it's been converted into condos,
Oh,
and it's called the Nordelec, so the Northern Electric.
Interesting.
Yeah, and I thought it'd be nice to see. This is the picture of one of the doors going into the to the building. It's great that these things cannot be changed. Even if the owners, people don't do that anymore. They don't engrave the company,
yeah.
the name of the company.
No, they don't.
Oh, great Providence.
So you know what? You know what is very interesting though too, Dan. So the one of the main RCA buildings, they called it the Nipper Building down in Camden, New Jersey,
Yeah,
has also been turned into condominium living. As they try to resurrect Camden, New Jersey, which was one of these older industrial cities that fell upon hard times and turned into a rather dangerous neighborhood in the 60s, 70s, and 80s. They're trying real hard to turn it around, but so much like the Northern Electric Company has become a home to many people, so has the RCA Nipper Building. So interesting symmetry there,
and that's the Nipper Building, and they recuperated the big vitrail, which is the
Stained glass
the
sign.
stained
Yep,
glass.
beautiful.
Yeah,
Yep,
yeah.
they have. Amazing.
I'd like to visit that
And of
place.
course, none of the people living there know what the hell to do with an AM radio, but that's another story.
At one point in time, our club wanted to restore a radio and loan it to them. Like we needed room to do our meetings, and we thought we could maybe get some room from them, one of their locales, but it didn't work out.
All about the money.
All about the money. Yeah. So at the end of the war, demand for a radio receiver was enormous, and Northern Electric was ready with what you probably know for their Baby Champ line. More than 136,000 were produced, many versions. Baby Champ was a line of, they had like 6 or 8 different models. In 1948, production was moved from the big building I just showed you to this new plant in Belleville, Ontario. And the plant that was in Montreal, just concentrated on producing telephones and telecommunication. Just so the other plant in Belleville was just concentrated on radios and TVs.
Interesting.
And this is the Belleville plant. Belleville is situated midway between Toronto and Montreal.
Okay.
So this is, I believe it was expanded, but it started out so this is a version of the plant. There was already expansion done in this picture, but there were other versions where I see more stuff in the back. Yeah. So this firm manufactures, they talk about the RCAF, Royal Canadian Air Force and stuff like that. But here in Belleville was it mainly radios and stuff.
So is that long gone, that building, or?
I did check. No, I believe it's gone. Yeah. So some ads,
Love it.
A classic.
a classic, eh? I mean, the biggest little radio in the world.
That's
It's pretty
awesome.
cool.
And those pop up all over the place down here. You know, that sort of
Yeah.
waterfall design in the dial. You see them all over the place.
Yeah. Now,
Sharp looking set.
They are.
when they first started producing right after the war, you may find some that have the dial like the other way around. Like instead of having 550 on one side, it'll have it on the other side,
Right.
because they basically went to their suppliers and said, give me what you have and I'll start producing. And so if you do find them, they're pretty rare.
Yeah, you know, you see a
Another-
lot of unusually produced sets like in 46 because it was what's left in the factory. So you see
Right.
these kind of like weird Art Deco combinations with things that look more machine age, and it's really whatever the parts were available.
There was a big race after when the war ended in September to who would be the first. And I will
Right.
talk about this. This is another ad.
I love the color combinations on those.
Victory.
Dude,
Oh, that's a nice. Look at that one. That's
Yeah.
a beauty.
It's very nice. I should have put a real picture. The Hammond Museum has one. They're not that hard to find. A couple of my friends have them. Yeah, of course, rooting for victory. You know, war had been going on for a couple of years before in Europe. You know, before they had to stop producing, so they were producing with the V for Victory while war was raging on in Europe.
Is
That's
that for your AM bandwidth tuning range?
Yes, it's standard. I'm not sure if it goes up to higher than 15. I don't know for this one. Sometimes you'll see 550 to 1500. But no, sorry, this one here has brought shortwave.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
I've never seen
Yeah.
one. What is it? What is the color of the case actually?
I'll try and find one. I have a picture of the Hammond Museum. Maybe it's in there, but
Okay.
yeah, it's kind of light colors. This is I believe it's like pastel colors.
Interesting.
Yeah. This is the 5200, I believe, Northern Electric. This is the original color, and this is my radio that I restored to this color.
Pretty close.
It's pretty close. I mean, it's somewhat metallic,
Yeah.
but actually, this is the color I had left over. I did, one of those Westinghouse fridge.
Oh, sure.
Small, and I had a color match done, so I had some leftover car paint to do that. So it was close enough for me.
I like it. It looks very nice.
It looks all right. Yeah. Another baby champ.
He's back.
Yeah. Of course, it's kind of neat to see the production line, see all the girls here
Oh, yeah.
working, assembling the radios. Some guys.
But none of them are
I al-
babies.
Yeah. I always get a kick of seeing how the organizational work, like back then, you see all the lighting.
Oh yeah.
See probably a space here for there you go. There's a foreman right here checking out the production of all the employees,
Yeah. No, it's cool.
So in 49, AT&T, US AT&T had to sell its stakes in Northern Electric to Bell Canada. So Northern Electric began developing its own products. And then Northern Electric started producing their first television sets in 53. Northern Electric stopped producing in 57 with its last Baby Champ model 5800 and 6903 consoles. And then, from this point on, Northern Electric goes on to this other, they forget about, I told you it was a sideline for them to produce radios, and they kept on going with their telecommunication. With
Oh, sure.
Bell Canada acquired it from the 60s up to the 2000s. Nortel would become the colossal player in telecommunication, employing almost 100,000 people. Until the big bubble burst of .com happened in 2002, and there was that famous scandal. John Roth who was the president of Nortel, was called at that time. I think he embezzled. He didn't embezzle, but he cashed in on the stocks before the thing crashed.
Yeah, I remember that. I remember because Nortel was a direct competitor with us in the early days of broadband routing and so forth.
Yes,
I remember
they
that
were. They were producing chips, in Ottawa. They were producing chips. They were all over the place, and when that thing went, I remember there was a company I was working for, our sales guy, I found him crying one day. Well, he had lost hundreds of thousands of dollars,
I bet.
in one day. Yeah.
I was working for Hewlett Packard at the time, selling the kind of test equipment that AT&T, Western Electric was trying to buy to compete with Nortel. And part of the strategy at that time was, it was very crazy times. And the Nortel sales rep for HP, and I was the Western Electric AT&T sales rep for HP in Massachusetts. And we had some interesting times. It got to the point where, like, one company or the other, that we both made a lot of money. The Nortel at one point in time contacted their HP sales rep and said, we would just like to buy the next 6 months of production of your high-speed test equipment, just so that
Nobody
Western Electric couldn't get it. That was like part of how they were going to deal with the competitive situation. If we take every one of your 12 gigabit bit error rate testers that you can make in the next 6 months, then Juniper won't get any, or AT&T won't get any. Nobody will get any.
Yeah.
And then they wound up canceling that order, and that's when the HP rep who called on Nortel also had a crying day at that point.
Kaboom.
Kaboom. Oh yeah. There was big buildings all over the place. There was a huge center for them right on the Montreal Island, and it all went. Moving backwards to RCA. So RCA Victor here traces its roots all the way back to Enid Berliner, who immigrated to the United States, and he went on to invent, I should say, perfect the gramophone in 1876. And then he in the 1900, he with legal trouble, he emigrates to Montreal, and he sets up small shop selling gramophones and parts. In 1908, he starts building one of the first sections that will become the big plant that you'll later see. In 24, Victor Talking Machine is founded, and it purchases the Berliner Gramophone Company. So that's where the two merge. And in 29, Victor Talking Machine merges with RCA of Canada, creates RCA Victor. And this is a picture of the Nipper dog at the museum here at Berliner Museum, and they also have the aluminum casting mold for that.
Wow.
Yeah. So a bit of story about that Nipper dog. I look at here. It was trademarked in July 1900. So I'm wondering. It says it was registered in the States in July 1900. So they must have moved to Canada, right after that, because right here they set up. He emigrates and he sets up shop. So right after he he trademarks it in the States. He leaves the States.
Oh,
RCA Victor was in the same plant, had a recording studio built, recognized as one of the best recording studios. It was used by a lot of artists. I put in here Oscar Peterson. I don't know if he's a jazz artist, if you know him, but a lot of Quebec artists, big Canadian artists recorded there. Along with radio manufacturing, the plant also designed, I believe they participated in the design, and they built the first Canadian satellite, the Alouette 1, in 1962. In 78, the RCA leaves the building, and the recording studio closes until it is refound, hidden behind closed sections, and it reopens in 85, and it will operate successfully until 2015. I was there. The Berliner Museum would do a lot of presentations at that place. This is a picture of the
Wow.
recording studio.
That's great.
It's
Love it.
beautiful. Yeah, it still exists. It's not. It's closed. I don't believe they have demolished it, but I don't know what will happen to that. Yeah, it's all veneer here on the side. It's just beautiful.
wow. It's a lot of labor intensive work.
All
there.
that curvature done for the acoustics, I'm sure,
Yep.
and et
Yeah.
cetera, probably all
Eliminate
engineered.
standing ways, you know.
Yeah. And this is the building. And this is still standing. Do we have this is a very early picture of the RCA building. It says the home of the Victrola.
Well, very interesting.
So it still exists. The Berliner Museum is in here. Is actually in here. So I think it's pretty amazing that this old building is still there, even with the chimney. I think
Wow.
it'll be nearly, yeah.
Does it still say RCA Victor on the chimney, or?
I would think so. Nobody's gone up there to paint anything else. So yeah.
Oh, love it.
I put in there these two slides. This is from Radio Trade magazine, and it's a listing. So this is September 45. So this is a listing of all the Canadian manufacturers, and is a question to them is, when are you going to produce a commercial set? So here you have an answer from Addison, you have an answer from Electrohome. It says, you may quote us that as stating that Electrohome record players will be available for shipment approximately October. So Electrohome won't be producing radios, but they probably have parts for record players. Here you have GE says the best answer I can give you. Already that doesn't start off there very well.
Yeah.
Our question is, small table models will be available. Marconi, I wish it were my power to answer approximately, so everyone is scrambling to be the first to produce the first radio after the war. And who beats everyone else? Well, it's RCA with their M45.
It's a classic.
It's a classic, yeah. So within my friends here, group of friends, all of us have to have an M45, and we all do.
Cool.
So yeah, 21st of September. So that's pretty darn quick, because the end of hostilities is 8th
Spring.
of May, is it? The armistice of May. So
Yeah.
pretty quick. Excellent.
I have an
reception.
RCA 66X2, which is 1946, and they made them here and they made them in Canada, and the version I have is Canadian. And I've had people tell me, the Canadian sets are superior, but they've never really been able to tell me why that may be. The schematics look awful close, and the set itself cosmetically looks extremely close, but it's just kind of interesting, to see this post-war, startup,
Mm.
so, I mean, who knows precisely, how that all worked out between the US and Canadian versions of RCA as far as did they share the same schematic with just a couple of different alterations, or is it, basically the same thing? It's a great little 6-tube set,
Mm.
and I can get 740 out of Toronto for my old time radio at 10 in the evenings, most times of the year. So it's a nice little 6-tube set, and nice
The
piece of Bakelite.
The Canadian sets were perceived to work better because it was colder up there, so they didn't
Oh,
run
that's
as
right.
hot as the
Yeah.
US ones.
There you go.
I knew there was some very technical explanation,
Yeah.
John, to the whole thing.
You know,
yes.
I was talking with Daniel Ladelle, and he worked for Fleetwood, and basically they would take a set and remove parts until it stopped working, and then re-put back that last part, and that would be the design. So
Value
I think
engineering gone.
value
I've heard that
engineering.
story.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I think everyone was in the same boat, whether it was in the States or Canada. I think it was probably a different story for back in the early days when you had farm sets that, the distance was great and the transmitters weren't all that powerful. But later on, I don't think there'd be a much difference in whether it be US or Canada until they started formalizing like CSA or the electrical code. So until that kicked in, even within Canadian sets, Northern Electric, I told you, wasn't renowned for great manufacturing. So we even within Canadian sets, we have opinions on which one is better. So in the end, when I go back and look at everything, I don't think the cold weather made a difference. Yeah. This is how is this for a publicity shot? The manager of manufacturing and the manager of sales, showing, they make it a big hype, of being the first to have the sets come off. But other than these two guys playing for the photo shoot, I mean, I love this picture of the production line, and then you've got they put these M45s, and these are M45s here on the racks, but these are not M45s in the background. I don't know what this is. So I think they hastily put this up for the shoot, and I don't think this guy is supposed to be there. These girls, yes, but
He's like, who the hell are those people? I never
Right,
see them down there on the floor.
oh yeah,
They should be hoisting a console for full effect.
yeah. If Photoshop existed back then, these guys would have been photoshopped in.
That's right.
Radio production until World War II. I always heard that in 42 they stopped producing, but really, we're looking at the Radio Trade Bulletin. In January 42, production had been ordered reduced by another 25%. So they were only ordered reduction in production in 42, but really the thing stopped in later in 42.
Interesting.
This is, I thought you guys would, I figured there's a lot of ham operators on your club. My friend, Alain, has a wireless set Mark III that is, I think, pretty cool. I mean, it's got this, if you look at it, it's written in English, but then you look at under there, it's written in Russian. And I'm thinking, why is there a Russian on this Canadian set?
Oh yeah.
It's called the tank set. I think they exported a lot of them to the excuse me, the Russian tank forces.
That's right. That's right. So like you guys had a Lend-Lease program. Well, we had the same thing, but we called it mutual aid. So so most of these sets that were built were part of the mutual, not most, but a lot of them were part of the mutual aid program to Russia. So that's why you have those two writings on it. And I think it's really neat that you see Canada and then here. And then this must be Chinese.
Cyrillic. Oh, right. Yeah.
Yeah. So his radio was produced by RCA, but the RCA, you know, the Mark III were produced by RCA, Northern Electric, and Marconi. So all big three produced them. And his radio set works. He didn't touch it. He checked out the caps. Everything is original and it's still working.
Wow.
Yeah,
Wow, that's neat
it's very nice. I mean,
and rare,
you know, yeah.
I'm sure.
I thought you guys would find it interesting. This is the Montreal Island. This is Laval. This is the island of Montreal. I live just about here. And just to give you an idea where these plants were located, so you had Northern Electric and RCA, and Marconi was more in the outskirts of this. This was the industrial part of Montreal. All of this here was in the early century, this was the highly industrialized part. Of course, all these are the residential area, and this is, you know, the wind direction is in this direction. So you get all the residential high-paying customers on this side of the island and all the workers on this side. So yeah, Montreal. The refineries are all here. So a lot of heavy manufacturing.
Upwind. Yeah.
That's right.
Makes sense.
That's right. Yeah. Typical. The Hammond Museum, I briefly, I'll mention it. They did produce some radios in the very beginning. Hammond was three brothers and a father. They first started building radio sets, and then they quickly moved on to what you guys know of Hammond for transformers and stuff. But they did produce some radio sets in there. This is Fred Hammond, the founder of the museum, and this is a back shot. I'll show you a better one later on. But just to mention it to you, if you're ever in Guelph, Ontario, this is a great place to visit. There's lots of radios in there. You can call the curator, Nori. She's very friendly, and you can have a guided tour. It's well worth the detour if you're near Toronto or Hamilton, Ontario, or Buffalo. Buffalo's not too far from Guelph.
Okay. Oh, look at that.
Yep.
Oh,
Yeah.
wow.
That looks fun.
I-
Oh, a Philco Predicta.
Yes.
Not only, it's kind of scary. I've got that Predicta and then two over to the left. That looks, well, I don't know. That looks like a Stromberg Carlson chair side that's right there, but it could be some different brand, but.
Yeah.
I've been to that museum. It's really fabulous. And when Fred was still alive, I worked him as
Really?
a ham radio operator.
Wow. He was very
VE3
involved.
VE3H Henry C Charlie.
There, yes, your memory is very good.
What a great museum.
Yeah, also from the museum, you can buy this book, Radios of Canada, published in 2002, I believe, from Lloyd Shacklehammer. Copies are still available, and I would say get them while you can, because I don't know if they're going to reprint. And but it's did I put in? Yeah, I put in here an excerpt. You know, so this is the kind of the format that you'll see inside. They'll have the brand names that you'll see on the radio and who made them, and so it goes on. It's about like 3/8 of an inch thick book. It's very good. It's very good reference material. It's very interesting. I mean, it's not a history book, but they do give you some text on some of them. So it's very good reading. And that's it.
That's great. Good job.
That was terrific.
Question on Canadian AM broadcast band. It seems as if the number of stations that we can get down here has pretty dramatically fallen off. For example, CJAD out of Montreal used to have a weak but acceptable signal here in northern New Hampshire. It seems as if was there a conscious decision made on Canadian broadcasting to kind of beam north of the border? And
well, most of the stations, there's there's big transmitter located on the south shore of Montreal, and they have an array of antennas, and they beam towards us, and by that fact, they also beams towards New York. So that's why you're getting it. Like I don't catch anything from. It's very hard for me to catch something from Toronto. I get CJAD 800 quite easily. I have a 1260 also, which is a big one. That's the most powerful one, but I don't believe they radiate towards the south. Yeah. So whether, obviously there was a big decline in the AM band. So locally, I think we have something like maybe 4 stations off the bat. I don't know how many exactly, but 680, 700, 1260, yeah, maybe about 4 stations that we have locally. Yeah.
I used to listen to CKVL in Verdun.
Yes. Yes, they went off the air maybe about, I dare say, more than 5 years ago, I believe.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, there's some really local stations. I mean, in the New Jersey Antique Radio Club, there's the broadcast DX contest. So that's when I start listening and trying to catch as much stations as I can. And I found out these university stations like not McGill, but there's another university that they transmit every once in a while, but it's really low power, and I have difficulty catching it here, and I'm not very far, so yeah.
The New Jersey guys just broadcast something on their reflector that there's a, again, for you it would be a stretch, but it's a small station down in, I believe, Georgia, that's going to do some experimental testing this weekend, as a matter of fact. So from midnight to 2 a.m., they'll be doing everything from voice to, sort of off the hook phone sound. Lots of strange things. I guess there's a very independently minded broadcaster who owns that station. And that stuff is really fun. There was some stuff down in, I think, the Kentucky area as well. These experimental programs that they can run to kind of test their signal strength and the directionality of the antennas and all.
Oh yeah.
All that stuff is really fun. But I mean, I get 740. It's one of these things that will sound like a local, or I can't get it at all out of Toronto. And I live for the 10 to 11 old time radio hours. But they play a lot of good music. Usually after midnight, it comes in much better. I wish the old time radio stuff was on a little later, because I think it hasn't really gone into that
Is it me?
sort of darkness zone, that we get.
Yeah, on
Yeah.
Sunday nights on 940, there's some really good jazz music, so it's really really good. Well, is there any other questions? I can stop the share and see everyone.
This is a silly question, because I just remember as a young boy having first built my very first shortwave radio via kit. The first and only thing I think I could get, my memory is faded a bit, but it was like CHU Canada Eastern Standard Time, and it was the bip bip.
Oh.
Bip. It was just the time station or something. Does that still exist, or did that go away?
They're still there.
They're still there?
Yeah, I don't know for that one, but we have yeah, I think we still have it.
Yeah, the BBC used to have some relay stations up in Sackville, up in I guess sort of the eastern provinces there, that they used to do. As a kid, I was a big shortwave listener, so I'd get you get the BBC from across the ocean, but you would get the Sackville, Canada. You would also get, they had a station down in Antigua that they would, do the beam up and down the east coast of the United States. It was fun
Rogers
stuff,
is
but obviously
manufacturing the
that's all
phone vacuum
gone.
tubes.
Yeah, there were some big stations also. There was another one in Sorel, close to, well, maybe about an hour from where I am. But the transmitters that are, obviously there's transmitter on Mount Royal. Montreal is an island and it's a mountain, and on top of that mountain, there's transmitters. So there are still some transmitters there. And then we have some on St. Catharines on the South Shore, and there's an array of AM transmitters on the South Shore. So that's where the bigger stations are. That 1260 is there. I don't know about the 940 where it is, but I think it's an array of three antennas. Yeah.
Is Rogers manufacturing its own vacuum tubes, or were they branding?
Yes, I don't talk about that, but Marconi did also. Well, Marconi did through another company, but they were producing it for them. Rogers produced their own tubes. RCA, Northern Electric also did some. Not much, but they did. But definitely Rogers, oh yes, for sure, because you know, Rogers also, much like Northern Electric, was also horizontally integrated. They produced just like Northern Electric. So you had raw material coming in on one end and finished product on the other end. And this was true for the vacuum tubes, the chassis, the bolts, and the tissue, the fabric, and everything else. So they would produce from A to Z. Yeah.
And the Rogers name still lives on.
The Roger name still lives on, even though they were having some troubles recently with their family stuff. They were having some family discussions. There was some quarrel between money in there, but anyways, the Roger name stays on, and that's another. It's a pretty good history. You know, I lived in Toronto for a while, so and I remember seeing that building. The Rogers building was located on the near the CNE, which is the Canadian National Exhibition site, right where the CN Tower is. So this is a manufacturing area, the beginning of the century. If you ever see pictures of Rogers, one of them you see the neon light of Rogers. It's humongous. It must be like 20 feet high, and it's a neon light of a tube, Rogers tube. I don't know what came out of it, but it's too bad that there's no museum for these old signs, because my guess is that thing went up and got scrapped. But it was you ever see a picture of the Rogers plant and you see it with that neon light of the tube? It's just amazingly beautiful.
Yeah.
So I hope that gave you a bit of a sense. Like I said in the beginning, my forte is not history, but I hope to have given you a bit of history on the plants that existed, that still exist around my place.
Oh, absolutely.
It's been enlightening and awesome. And just a question, Dan, what is the collecting hobby like up in your neck of the woods? I mean, is it, I know you said you were part of SQRCA, but I know there's a Western Canadian collectors group, and there's a couple of groups up there. So it sounds like it's a pretty active hobby.
Well, every province, so there's a Canadian Association for all the vintage radio. So if you look it up, I believe it's Spark. Maybe I'm wrong, but I know there's a Canadian hat that oversees everyone. The BC group is in there. I think BC is big. Toronto, I don't know them very much. Maybe it's an impression, but I don't believe they're that big, unfortunately, because there's a fair amount of history in Toronto for antique radio. And Quebec being different from everyone else, we have our own radio club that's not part of that Canadian association. But really the vintage radio collecting, radio manufacturing was big in Quebec. The foundations of early radio is really here in Montreal, I would say. So we're still pretty active. There's a fair amount of people. In the SQCRA, for the 100 or so guys in there, most of them are collecting. some, not many, but some are restoring. And there's also these guys that come into the club every once in a while just to restore one radio.
Mhm.
What we don't have in Quebec is the history, you know, of the people who worked in the plants, like the Ottawa Vintage Radio Club. Lots of those guys were part of the radio, working in the radio industry. Daniel Labelle from our club worked in the radio industry, but most of the members didn't. Like Ken Lyons, which the Northern Electric presentation part I showed you, he was obviously working in there, but we don't have that many. New Jersey is just, that radio club is just beautiful for that, because a lot of those guys were heavily involved in radio and
Yes, they have
technical
that Alexander Magoon with the International Electronics Engineers IE.
Yeah.
So they have all this living history stuff, and it's
Yes.
really cool. It's very
Yeah.
good. So, I mean, here's my pitch to you. So if you can go to Nearfest in Deerfield, New Hampshire,
Yes,
you could come to Brookline, New Hampshire,
I
Yes,
could.
yes.
hang
Yeah.
out with us.
Yeah.
So you
Yeah.
keep an eye on our website. If you ever want to come on down,
Yeah, absolutely.
it would be a
Yeah.
trip, and maybe find some nice sets to bring home.
Yeah, sure.
We'd, I know that we'd love to have you back when you restore your Vimy
Yes.
console, because that would be worth a treat for a tour and a power up for everybody.
Yes,
Well,
well, when I do get going on that one, I'm finishing a cone speaker right now that I'm restoring. I had to remachine the center. These cone speakers have a lot of times these pot metal holders in there. I don't know if you ever seen that in radio. The pot metal just degrades and falls apart. And I actually, so I started to get involved in 3D and CNC machining, and I've remachined myself a new part out of aluminum. So I'm going to hopefully talk to Buford Chichester. I hope to see him in Kutztown and discuss with him the speaker details. But yeah.
Well, it sounds like you get down here, so you have no excuse not to come to one of our
That's
New
right.
Zealand events.
Well,
And I know you're probably waiting to go to bed so you can get up and drive down to Deerfield tomorrow. So we're not going to hold you up any
No
much
problem.
longer than
No,
we
it was
already
great.
have. So
We
Yeah.
our
enormously
next
appreciate.
event is in May 21st, and you keep your eyes on a schedule. You want to come down in the fall before?
So you have it
winter
also in the
sets in?
fall?
We
You
do.
have it?
We normally have two events that are more regional, which are in Brookline, New Hampshire, and those are in the spring and the fall. And then usually in March, though we're trying to find a new venue because we've had a little bit of an issue with our host up in New Hampshire. We normally have an event. It's one of the biggest events. It's the old Antique Radio Classified radio event that they used to have. Ontario used to host. We've taken it over, and we get folks from up and down the East Coast who come to that. And we have to find a new home for that. So, but the Brooklines you can count on. You can always check us out on the web, Dan.
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
September 24th. If you're wanting to
great.
come down for a nice fall drop in.
Drop in,
Okay.
come on by, pick up a few sets.
Yeah.
More things. You need more things to work on, I'm sure.
Commiserate
But
over.
maybe you can find some parts, or meet some interesting
I'm
folks who
sure,
have
Paul.
some connection to Canadian radio.
I'm sure I don't have it. I'll need to buy it.
You never have enough. That's right.
Just a quick momentary view of Nearfest where you're coming tomorrow.
Oh,
Yes, Tom.
cool.
For you, goodness
Very
sake,
nice.
please dress well because the wind is blowing and it is very cold. But this
Okay.
is what it looks like at the moment inside. There are a few people camping out like me, and we'll look forward to seeing you.
Cool. That's very nice, Tom. Yes, we're leaving tomorrow at 6. And, we were thinking of leaving earlier, but I'm not too crazy about getting up at 4 o'clock in the morning. But, it's just radio stuff. So leave me some good ones.
Okay, yeah, I think it's smart for you to come in a little later. It's supposed to be 36 at 6 a.m. and go up into the 40s and 50s by the time you get here. So it'll be
Yeah.
survivable.
Sure, sure. Tom, are you a vendor there or just you're just a buyer?
Yes, I am definitely. I'm an Enigma vendor and a telegraph
Oh,
key
it's
vendor.
Tom
and
Pereira. Sorry, Tom, I didn't, okay, I thought it might be you, but I wasn't too sure. Okay, well, Tom, I'll definitely go by and say hi.
That's great. Look forward to seeing you.
Yes, yes, yes.
Thank you,
Yeah.
Tom.
Yeah, thank you. So Tom, are you in a foxhole or something?
I'm in my car at the moment with an electric heater on, not
Good.
looking forward to a chilly night.
Oh,
Oh, boy.
Braver soul than I am, I'll tell you. I hope you have a little
Yeah.
something to warm you up. Over 80 proof, 40 proof.
I haven't thought
There's no
about that. That's a
moonshine
great idea.
allowed.
I was counting on 300 watts, not 300 proof.
All right. Thank you,
All
Tom.
right.
Thanks for the field reporter.
Cool. Very
Our
nice.
intrepid reporter in the field, Mr.
No, that's
Tom
pretty
Pereira,
good.
ladies and gentlemen.
Yeah, the quality of the images is just great.
Yeah.
So that bodes well because we've thought about maybe doing some Zooms from our meetings. And it was interesting because Tom also mentioned that he had sent a link out. Apparently the folks up there are offering a service where you can kind of have a personal shopper who'll roam the grounds for you for like a half an hour or whatever, and Zoom with you and try to find that item, whether it's a radio or a part or whatever you're looking for, and then we'll procure it for you, and you make a small donation to
Really?
to the group, so you can sort of have like a remote shopping experience. So
Cool.
pretty cool stuff, that
Yeah.
we've gotten into, especially with the remote meetings.
Yeah.
Maybe the
yeah,
best
that's-
thing that have come out of the pandemic, and it looks like there's a VW bus there with a little pop-up. And,
Oh, yeah. And let me
Yeah.
tell you, those things get crazy money these days. So they're driving a gold mine, no less.
he may leave with all his
Yeah, that
radios
is.
and sell his
That,
truck.
that is
you know
a
what I mean?
that's a mid to late 80s Vanagon Westphalia. They are getting
Yeah.
kooky money for those. Like I'm talking like, $30,000 to $40,000 is being asked for. I don't know if they're getting it, but that's what I'm seeing on the web. They're the last of the true classic rear engine VWs. So,
Well, gentlemen, I'm going to close up the meeting this evening and say thanks again to Jan to joining us tonight.
yes,
And
that was
have
terrific.
you.
good luck at
Many
Near
thanks,
Fest or
Dan.
whatever you might be seeking or not seeking that just has to come home.
Mhm.
And we'll touch base with you again. We'd love to have you back. And good luck to all who are headed up to New Hampshire for the Near Fest. And we'll
Cool.
hopefully see you all again in Brookline.
Well, thank
Have a
you,
great
everyone,
night.
and thanks for the invitation. It was a pleasure
Yeah,
to do
Thank
it.
you, Daniel.
Yeah, thank you.
Beautiful.
We'll have to have you back.
Nice to meet you virtually.
Great
Thank
talk,
you.
Daniel.
In person soon. Take care.
All
Thank
right.
you.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
All right, everybody, take it easy.